Thank you all for being here for our weekly press conference. We do have a update on the water situation, but before we get that, I just want to do a quick reminder that Riverfest is in full swing, and I hope everyone is enjoying the festivities. I want to give a shout out and a big thank you to Wichita Festivals for once again pulling together a great event. We've gotten just a lot of positive feedback on getting back to, frankly, somewhat normal. Let me knock on some wood before I make that statement, but getting back to normal a little bit by having a more robust, normalized Wichita festivals over at Riverfest. So very, very glad that's going off, and want to encourage folks to might not have had a chance to go out to make sure they can have a chance to get out there for the last few days. Now for the water update, we got some good news early this morning. KDHE has rescinded the water boil advisory for the city of Wichita. The advisory remains in place for the cities of Rose Hill, Valley Center, Derby, Keachai, and Cedar County Rural Water District number 2 and number 3. So here to tell us more is Don Henry from our Public Works Utilities Department. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Don Henry, Deputy Director of Public Works and Utilities. As you're all aware, KDHE directed the city to issue a boil water advisory out of an abundance of caution on Tuesday afternoon. Just to go back over kind of the highlights of what happened, this was a result of a slight increase in measured turbidity during a routine maintenance procedure on one of the treatment filters. It was a slight amount, short-lived in duration, but out of abundance of caution and due to a regulatory limit, the boil advisory is put in effect. City staff worked closely with KDHE around the clock on the recovery portion of it, which included an aggressive flushing of our water mains on the perimeter around the water treatment plant. It also included pulling 180 water samples and testing them for bacteria. We met with KDHE at 12:30 this morning to go over the results, and due to the favorable results of the samples indicated that the city's water remained safe the whole time through the duration of the incident, and the boil advisory was lifted for City of Wichita customers about 1 o'clock this morning. Keep in mind that the communities that the mayor mentioned, they do remain under the boil advisory, so they should continue to follow KDHE's directions for that. The City of Wichita staff is working closely with each of our wholesale customers to ensure they have the support that they need to get their samples done timely, help coordinate with KDHE if we need to on the results. We're utilizing our laboratory to run the results. We're going to do what we can to help them get out from under the advisory as quickly as possible. Now that we're on the other side of this, we've had a chance to take a look at what we learned through this process. And the minute it happened, of course, we start to look at what led up to this and what happened. And so as part of our continuous improvement process, incidents like this, and even incidents that don't rise to this level, we always do a hot wash, we call it, or a review of the conditions and what happened. And so measures have been put in place to make sure that we've got the right procedures and oversight in place when we carry out this particular operation. And we're also working with a consulting water process engineer to make sure that we have all of the details covered. So we've got a high level of confidence that we'll be able to continue this particular type of operation and maintenance on a filter without any future incidents.
What should residents do to ensure that their water coming into their house is now flushed out, ready to go, clean? Any tips or advice that you should give?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking that. The water is completely safe, so people can use their water as normal. They don't need to take any additional actions. The sampling did indicate that the water has remained safe throughout, so there's no difference in what's in their pipes. Their private pipes is what's in our mains, so we're good to go.
Obviously, some concerns from people just in the fact that we've had 2 incidents happen in less than a year's time. What's to prevent this from happening again in, say, 1 month, 2 months, a couple months down the line? What steps are being taken?
Right. So the 2 incidents that resulted in these 2 different boil orders were unrelated. So they were 2 different kinds of things. One was a broken pipe One was during a maintenance procedure on a filter. So one in the treatment plant, one out in the distribution system. So we've learned from those incidents to make sure that those don't happen again. We've got highly qualified staff. We have to have one Class 4 licensed operator on duty at all times. Instead of one of those, we have 5 of those, and we have 2 of those on duty at all time. Make sure that we've got the right training in place, that they've got the support they need and the resources, and just continue to be diligent and get better at what we do.
Is there anything that could have been done to prevent this from happening? Is it an equipment problem?
It was not an equipment failure. What we were doing is we were draining one of the filters down. We have 14 filters. We were taking one of them down to pull a sample of the media. You actually dig up part of the media. There's some anthracite carbon-based product and some sand. From time to time, it's on occasion what we'll do is we'll look at that to make sure our filters are in good condition, to see if variability in our raw water quality is affecting or having a negative impact on our filters. And so occasionally we will drain a filter down and take a look at that. As to how this happened, it's relative to the filter loading and the speed at which it was drained. And so working with this process engineer to understand the relationship between the speed of the drain and the loading on this filter is the key to making sure that this doesn't happen again.
Oh, please. And we'll have time afterwards for more questions to jump into this. I do, while we're on this topic, want to thank staff who've really been working around the clock to make sure that we get everything where it needs to be as far as water. Very much encouraging to know that the tests not only came back, but they showed that our water, the integrity of our water remained throughout this crisis. However, as folks have mentioned, the 24 hours is part of the testing process to ensure that the integrity of our water was good enough to drink. We're glad that it passed that, but also that timeline, during that timeline, these tests show that our water was still drinkable during that time. So very glad about staff not only being on top of this, but also, frankly, we learned yesterday that this wasn't an easy thing to spot. We had trained staff who not only were able to spot this issue, but also self-reported it. And we want to continue to foster that type of environment here at the city that is both accountable and transparent. So we understand this was an incredible inconvenience. It's terrible anytime we have to do this, but we do want to just applaud staff who did what was right over what was easy. I think it would have been pretty easy for someone to not notice something like this, and we want to make sure that we put the safety of our citizens and our staff know we put the safety of our citizens above everything else, because even if one person got sick, that's one person too many. So thank you for the staff for working around the clock to make sure that we are back online and everything is going well. So next thing we're going to talk about is our summer classes for Evolve. Just a reminder that registration for summer classes is still open. If you're looking for something fun to do this summer for you or your family, check out the classes through City Arts, Library, and of course our Parks and Recreation Department. City Arts has seen record-breaking advanced registration for summer programming, but there's still room for anyone interested. So from learning a new language to taking an outdoor gardening class to even learning the basics of karate. Some of you might be interested in that. There's something for everyone, for pretty much whatever interest you have. We're confident that there's something that we're offering that would serve those interests. Also, we want to encourage folks to not wait until last minute when it comes to signing up for these classes. Frankly, my wife did this with our boys, wanted to sign them up for a class, and we found out that because we waited till last minute and other folks did, there wasn't enough folks signed up for that class, and they wound up canceling it. So if you are thinking about doing one of these classes, we recommend that folks sign up before the deadline so that those classes, the instructors know that they will actually have a class and don't run into that risk of that class being canceled. Next, we'll talk about the budget. We are looking for public input for our 2023-2024 budget currently. So be sure to check out Forum, which is our budget simulator, to weigh in on how you think we should be adjusting our annual budget. We also have staff at upcoming district advisory boards, and the city's social media town hall will be held at 6 p.m. on June 23rd. So we are utilizing our DAB meetings, which happen in each district, and also utilizing our social media platforms to take an input and forum, which is somewhat of a newer tool that we have that we were hoping that folks can jump into and help give us feedback. City Manager Robert Layton will present a draft budget to the council on July 19th at our regular meeting at 9 a.m. Then we'll have an evening hearing on the budget at 7 p.m. on August 4th. So for folks who would like to attend that meeting, we wanted to make sure that we push it out at evening so that people can attend after work. So the budget will be heard 2 more times at the city council meetings at 9 a.m. on August 16th and on the 23rd. Again, this is setting the entire year's budget, so we really want folks to be able to give us some input on that. A budget is not just the numbers that we use to fund these programs, but also the reflection of our community values. So please give us some input so that we can make sure that our budget accurately reflects the values of the community and the expectations of the city moving forward. With that, we have an announcement of our new data portal, which now includes census data for Wichita and the surrounding areas from 1990 all the way up to 2020. So we have Mike with our IT department, who is here to give us an overview of the new mapping applications available to the public to interact with, and the interactive dashboard for viewing historical census data and the city limits since 1910. Goes quite a ways.
Thank you, Mayor Whipple. Again, I'm Mike Colmeyer. I'm the GIS team lead at the City of Wichita. On Monday, we had released the new ICT census portal. You can find this out on wichita.gov. It is actually incorporated with our open data portal. So when you go to open data, if any of you are not familiar with it, it's opendata.wichita.gov. And there's a new census tab as well as a census icon that people can launch. And when you launch it, it will now launch this for you. So it'll have additional statistics comparing 2010 to 2020, including housing data. We also have the ability now users and citizens can download the data and research it and look at it for themselves. On top of that, we have added 24 web maps utilizing demographics, breaking down racial demographics as well as housing information. So we now have not only just regular demographics, we also have now a way to incorporate the differences between 2010 and 2020 at the neighborhood level. So when individuals launch one of these web apps, you're actually going to have this broken down to the census block group, which is in essence a neighborhood, and individuals can click on this to find out more details about what has changed since 2010, as well as general statistics as well. On top of that, we also have, like Mayor said, we have now a City of Wichita Census History dashboard that citizens can go in, and there's across the top you have everywhere from 1910 to 2020. So when individuals click on, let's say 1970, the city limits will actually reflect what it was back in 1970, as well as provide you the census statistics at that particular time. So it's a cool little tool that citizens can utilize and find out more information. Again, you can reach this at opendata.wichita.gov, or you can also visit our GIS homepage at gis.wichita.gov, which also displays a lot of applications that are available to the public to utilize and explore information at the city. Any questions? I'll minimize this for you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Excuse me. Want to do a quick reminder that we have the National Neighborhood Night Out is Tuesday, August 9th. Neighborhood Night Out is an annual event that promotes neighborhood safety and combats crime by encouraging neighbors to get to know one another through neighborhood parties, picnics, cookouts, and other social gatherings over one designated evening. Neighbors can request free barricades or apply for street closures to help plan their parties. Materials to help neighborhoods plan their events and register are available at wichita.gov/NNO or call 268-4165 with questions. So I look forward to getting out there and meeting with the community that evening and getting a chance to meet people right there in their own neighborhoods. So look for folks who are willing to participate, throw these events, and also register them online so that folks like myself and also council members like Councilmember Ballard, who's with us, will be able to attend some of these events as well. So we know where they are and who's hosting them. So with that, we'll open up to questions really about anything we went over or anything happening in the city. Sir.
Mayor, I was going to ask if the city is considering anything to deal with the rising problem with gas prices, obviously a big strain for everyone across the city. Is there a room left in the budget to address that, or is that something that you guys are talking about?
So really good question. One of the things we have to do when it comes to fighting not just increased gas prices, but also inflation, it's never been harder to be or not harder, but more expensive to be a Kansan, to be a Wichitan than it is today. So one of the things we've done last council meeting was actually, we approved with the 7-0 vote bonds that will help expand an ethanol plant right here in Wichita. So we are contributing to this global crisis, to be honest, the best we can as a city by encouraging and incentivizing alternative fuel such as ethanol that is going to hopefully, although marginally, decrease some of the gas prices. So Wichita's willing and happy to do our part to contribute, such as encouraging the growth of alternative fuel that's right in our backyard with the ethanol plant. Now, moving forward, we have to be creative where you can attack the issue head on. So the ethanol plant, for example, and the expansion of that is really attacking gas prices head on. We know the more domestic ethanol that we produce, the more, the cheaper that component of gasoline is going to be. However, we also have to look at ways where helping people when it comes to balancing their own budgets. For example, a few weeks ago, I was invited to the White House Rose Garden for their announcement of their affordable connectivity plan, which has folks who make under a certain amount of money, which is a lot of people. We have a lot of folks who qualify, or if you qualify for any other type of assistance, you would qualify for free internet. Free high-speed internet, or up to $30 worth of free internet. So knowing that's a national program, what is our role on a city level to get the information out to folks who are qualified? So even though you might be paying more in gas, you might also be able to pay less in stuff like internet. And in addition, we recognized in this last meeting, took a vote on extending our specials when it comes to new housing developments to 20 years instead of 15 years. So what that does is the city actually holds the debt for sidewalks and underground infrastructure that goes into housing. Well, because of housing costs, material costs are rising just like gasoline is, we need to be creative on what can we do to lower that monthly payment to folks who are trying to either move into a new house or to move into a larger house as their family grows. And a way that we're doing that is this 2-year pilot program with a 20-year assessment. So the loan or the amount is spread over 20 years instead of 15 years. It's going to be lower for folks who are moving into these developments to try to curb the economic impact of the global economy still rebounding from COVID, but also dealing with Putin's war against Ukraine, which has not only thrown off our global economy when it comes to fuel and gasoline, but also we're going to see a ripple effect when it comes to food as well. So here in the city, we're finding creative ways to attack these issues and doing what we can, knowing that a lot of this type of stuff is a global issue, such as gasoline. What can we do at the city level to come alongside some of these other efforts?
More specifically to the city's budget regarding fuel costs. What's the situation regarding the city's budget? What steps are you doing to combat those rising fuel costs? I would imagine you have contracts, that sort of thing. What are you doing right now? How's the budget looking? What's it look like moving forward? How are you dealing with those rising fuel costs?
So rising fuel costs for like our vehicles and what we do.
The transportation Transportation, more vehicles, yes.
Okay, and that might have been your original question, and I'm sorry if I take these. Thanks for the clarification or how we can add on to this. So we actually have built into our projections increases for inflation and also increases for fuel costs because the way we budget here, we are very conservative minded. Really proud, even though we've seen more ups and downs in the economy over the last 2.5 years since I've been mayor than at any time in our city's history. We have always, over the last 2 years, exceeded our expectations when it comes to our balance in the budget. So we are very conservative when we do our projections, projecting out, and also at this point, if we, for some reason, were off on some of these projections, very hard to measure the economy at this current moment. We have more money than at any time in our city's history in our rainy day fund, which is an account that it's a permanent reserve account, and it is the account that only the council can touch. So if we're off, we have about $15 million in that account that we can use if we had to, without even affecting any other programs at this point. Now, one of the things that we've been able to do as a city over the last few years to be responsible when it comes to getting off fossil fuels and having less dependence on the Middle East and on Russia and on other tyrants is to look towards American-based ways of renewable energy, of utilizing renewable energy. So we now have been converting our bus fleet to an electric fleet. And we've been doing that for the last few years pretty consistently. The city hall and our city buildings, we have over 90% of our energy coming in since I became mayor, coming out of wind energy, contracting with wind farms in Kansas and also Oklahoma. So we have been modernizing our own fleets to get off of the dependency on the international oil market, and so we're planning for increased costs. We're also have been steadily marching towards more renewables because it's not only putting money into the American economy where our money should be, but also it helps us in these situations where we see less volatility in our own budgets because, again, we are now relying on wind and electricity from renewables much more.
Has the city had to tap into that fund for rising fuel costs yet?
No, we have not. And our budget, I kind of joke with Bob a little bit about this. Our city manager, I think I'm joking, but I think I'm serious too. He goes to sleep reading the budget at night to help put him to sleep. I think he's a master of the budget process, and also we have some of the best staff I think in the state working in our budget department, and that's why again we continuously exceed expectations when it comes to the end of the year, how much money we thought we were going to spend, but because of the culture here, we're able to have a balance which would exceed what we originally thought those balances were.
So you're comfortable with where you are right now with the budget? Right?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And frankly, as someone who cut my teeth in the political environment of Topeka the last 10 plus years, this is the first time in my nearly 10-year career in politics and government where we're not in a budget crisis. And I'm talking about working in Topeka, we were always under a budget crisis because the projections weren't meeting the expectations. And here, coming in with COVID, having to cut $14 million out of our budget, we are in a better position than, frankly, I've seen in my experience of government over the last 10 years.
Then I have one question about the animal shelter. A lot of animals coming in. There's a staff shortage there. How is the city dealing with that?
So we actually met with our staff over the Wichita Animal Shelter and also the Wichita Humane Society, Kansas Humane Society. Thanks, Casey. To ask really what the status is and what do you need. And frankly, we are really impressed with the staff over there. I think there's some misinformation about how we handle animals and what our role is. Keep in mind, the city of Wichita's Wichita Animal Shelter, our purpose is public safety. So if there is a a pack of dogs roaming around and biting people or nipping at people. That's our goal, is to get those dogs off the streets so that children and folks don't have to, I guess, interact with a dangerous animal. We don't do the adoptions. We actually contract out with the Kansas Humane Society and over 160 other organizations that network dogs. We are technically and performance-wise a no-kill shelter, which means that if we have any dog that is healthy, adoptable, and safe, or any animal, we have an incredible success rate, over 97% success rate in networking these animals to find homes. And that's because of our amazing partners. Over 160 organizations partner with the city of Wichita and with the Kansas Humane Society so that we can, I don't know how they do it. I don't know if they just buy the dog a bus ticket and send it to New York, but that's the type of stuff that we're able to do to make sure that animals that are healthy, safe, and adoptable can get into loving homes.
What's being done to update the city's water infrastructure, considering that the water treatment plant isn't going to be open for another couple of years? To my understanding, a lot of the pipes and mains are pretty old.
Yeah, so they're very old, actually, but we also have to take into account that what the lifespan is of some of these pipes. For example, we might have a pipe that is 80 years old, but the lifespan of that pipe was projected to be 140 plus years. We know some of our infrastructure is aging, and we have some really good staff who are on top of this to ensure that we stay ahead of problems. As Alan King, Director King, mentioned, the situation that happened 2 days ago was one that when it happens, they were able to get ahead of it. So we have our folks who are trained to keep our water plant going as best as it can to until that new water plant is online. But again, we're in a better situation than we could be because, again, we are actually progressing with a brand new state-of-the-art water plant that broke ground on, I think, a couple of years ago. So we're progressing towards that timeline in which we will have a modern water plant that we'll bring online that should hopefully have much less problems than our 80-plus year water plant that we're currently utilizing. And it's important not just for Wichita and the future of Kansas, because water is very important, but also for our reputation as a city. I understand that these boil orders are just a tremendous hit on people's lives. However, we want to continue to recognize any problems and to get that information out there because we don't want to be one of those cities you read about that missed something and then people got sick. We are the largest water provider in the entire state of Kansas, and to continue to do that well, not only do we have to update our plant and also make sure that we have the best people working for us, but also make sure that we have parts on hand so that we have as little interruption of service as possible. And I don't know if our professional staff wants to add anything. These guys actually graduated with real science degrees, so is that good? Or do you need?
If you'd like me to expand on that, I can't wrap it down.
It's up to you. You good? Okay.
I got a question about the filters. Will the new water plant use the same type of filter, or is it all upgraded stuff?
There we go. That's a tech question. Assuming it is. I could answer it, but I'd probably use.
Yeah, so the new water treatment plant will use technologies that are very similar as far as the treatment process, right? There will be additional technology. There will be a lot more instrumentation and control, and so it'll be a different plant. They'll also think of it as two plants in one as far as the level of redundancy that's built into this plant. So it's different in that aspect to our existing plant. But the treatment process, as far as lime softening, the type of chemicals that we use, the type of filtration that we use, and the settling, those will all be very similar to what we're doing now because our raw water sources are the same. We've still got Cheney Reservoir, we've still got the Equus Beds well field, we still have ASR and our local well field here. So all those raw water sources, the treatment process that we use right now, very effective. We put out some really, really high quality good finished water. But to circle back to the question that you had a while ago about some of the things that we do, even though our water treatment plant is at the near the end of its useful life, we've got a lot of good life and use out of the existing water treatment plant. there's a few things that you have to do when a plant's at this age, right? You have to pick your failures. You have to understand what can break and what you can fix on failure, what you have to stay out in front of, and then you have a very aggressive maintenance plan. For instance, with our settling basins, we take those down twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. Go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that any parts that are worn or that might break down, that those are replaced and they're like new. Then for those long lead item parts and pieces that are hard to get a hold of, we have to make sure that we've got a robust inventory of those things so that they're right there on the shelf that we can reach out and get. We have to keep staff on their toes, fully prepared, 24-hour-a-day operations and coverage for repairs. And then also, we've got a lot of depth with outside consulting services that we can bring on board if we need to. And then if you'll research the capital improvement program, you can see the level of investment that we make in both our horizontal and vertical assets. And the soon-to-be published 2022 proposed CIP will be coming out as well.
And I do want to just touch on, and it might be premature, the testing for the new water plant will actually be done by a third party. So we're looking at ways to have a third party organization come and test the water, so you have that extra layer of accountability on top of not just the folks who are running the plant, but really an outside group who might actually have be looking at it slightly different to ensure that the water quality remains high. And again, our goal is to be transparent and also accountable. We've had 2 water boils, but also we've had a third issue where we had a press conference to warn people, hey, if this gets bigger, then we might have to go to a boil order. So our goal is to push out information as we get it, to make sure that folks are aware, to take proper precautions in case things get worse. And frankly, we need to continue, not just when it comes to maintenance, but also utilizing a robust communication strategy and utilizing scenario planning and looking back in the last few years and realizing, particularly the last few years, things happened. And we need to not look at these as isolated incidents, but actually prepare, what if something else happens in the future? What's the best way to get information now so people can take the necessary steps to protect themselves and their families, not just with water, but any type of other type of emergency. And we're working really close with our communications team and our tech team that's updating our websites, making them much more user-friendly, and also trying to figure out what systems are in place that we can tap into to do a better job when it comes to getting information out as quick as possible during these types of situations. And we, of course, pray that we never have to use these type of systems, but we know we live in a world that's uncertain, and we want to make sure that we find silver linings in events like this. When we look at them, in those silver linings, the opportunity to grow from the experience. How do we grow from this negative experience to ensure that if something comes up in the future, we can get through it with less disturbance or less anxiety as possible? Further questions? You just moved your hand slow. Yep. So I got a teacher energy, so just move your hand up and go call on. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.